It was a cold, quiet night in the small town of Elmswood. David had just finished washing the dishes and turned off the kitchen light. His dog, Max, growled softly and stared out the back window. David walked over, thinking maybe a raccoon was in the yard again. He opened the door and stepped outside. The air was sharp and cold. He looked around, but at first saw nothing. Then, by the corner of the fence, he saw movement. Someone, was crouching near Max's food bowl. David blinked, not sure what he was seeing. A woman, thin and dirty, wearing torn clothes, was on her knees. She was eating the dog's food with her hands, fast, like she hadn't eaten in days. Her hair was long, messy, and covered half her face. She looked wild, lost, like an animal trying to survive. Max growled again, but didn't attack. The woman stopped and looked up, her eyes wide with fear. David raised his hand slowly, showing he meant no harm. "It's okay," he said gently. "I'm not going to hurt you." She didn't answer. Her eyes were strange, almost glowing in the dark. She looked at David like she didn't understand his words. She tried to speak, but her voice was broken, like she was learning the language. David took a step closer, and she crawled back quickly, like a scared cat. "It's okay," he repeated. "You're safe here." She looked around, shaking from cold and fear. David took off his jacket and placed it on the ground between them. Then he backed away, giving her space. Slowly, she reached out and pulled the jacket around her. For a few seconds, they just stared at each other. David didn't know what to do. Should he call the police? Was she homeless? A runaway? Or something else? Her skin was pale, but not in a normal way. It looked almost silver in the moonlight. And her eyes, there was something about them that didn't feel human. She stood up slowly, still holding the jacket. Her legs were shaky, but she managed to walk toward him. Just a few steps. Then she stopped, looked into his eyes, and whispered a single word. "Hungry." David's heart sank. Whoever she was, whatever she was, she needed help. He nodded and said, "Come inside." She hesitated, then followed him carefully, watching everything around her like it was all new. Inside, David gave her a blanket and sat her near the heater. Max barked once, but then sat down quietly, watching her. David made a bowl of soup and placed it in front of her. She sniffed it first, unsure, then took a sip. Her eyes lit up, and she drank the rest quickly. David smiled, but also felt a strange chill. Who was this woman? Where had she come from? Why was she acting like Earth was a foreign planet? She pointed to the spoon, then to her mouth. "Eat," she said, trying to copy what he had said earlier. David nodded. "Yes, that's right, eat." She smiled, a small, soft smile that lasted only a second. Then she looked around the room, touching things carefully. She touched the couch, the lamp, the window. Everything seemed new to her, like she had never seen these things before. Then something strange happened. She touched the metal toaster and pulled her hand back fast, like it burned her. She hissed softly and stared at her fingers. They were red, but the burn faded in seconds, right before David's eyes. David froze. That wasn't normal. That wasn't human. He didn't say anything, just watched her. She looked at him and tilted her head, confused. Then she pointed at herself and said one word, slowly, carefully. "Lost." David felt a strange mix of fear and sympathy. This woman, whatever she was not here by choice. He asked softly, "Where are you from?" She looked at him for a long time. Then, almost in a whisper, she said, "Far." That night, David didn't sleep. He gave her a pillow, let her rest on the couch. She slept with one eye half open, like she didn't trust the world. He stayed nearby, watching her breathe. Outside, the sky was clear. But high above, past what human eyes could see, something else was watching. Something that had followed her to Earth. And it wasn't kind. The girl who wasn't human. In the morning, the woman was gone. David panicked, rushing outside barefoot. The blanket he had given her was lying in the wet grass. His dog, Max, sniffed the air and barked twice, confused. David looked around the yard, into the trees, over the fence. No sign of her. He checked the dog bowl. It was empty, but next to it was something strange. A small symbol, scratched into the dirt with a stick or maybe her finger. It looked like a triangle inside a circle, with a line through both. David stared at it. It didn't look like anything he'd seen before. Not a gang sign, not anything human. It looked alien. Suddenly, Max ran to the shed and started barking. David followed, heart racing. He opened the shed door, and there she was, curled up in the corner, shivering, hiding. Her eyes were wide, but she didn't attack. She just looked scared. "I thought you left," David said. She shook her head slowly. "No leave," she whispered. Cold, noised people. David realized she didn't understand what was safe and what wasn't. The world was loud, strange, full of things she didn't know. He helped her inside again, made her toast and warm tea. She stared at the toaster like it was alive. When the bread popped up, she jumped back, knocking over a chair. Max barked, but stayed close to her, tail low. She sat on the floor instead of the chair, held the cup with both hands, and drank slowly. David noticed something weird again. Her fingers, they had tiny grooves, almost like circuits under the skin. They pulsed lightly, glowing blue when she was calm. He didn't say anything, just watched. Later, he turned on the TV to the news. The woman watched, amazed, like she was seeing magic. When a helicopter appeared on screen, she flinched and covered her ears. "No sky machine," she said. "Hurt fire." David leaned forward. "You were attacked?" She nodded slowly. "Ship fall, boom alone." It hit him then. She was part of something bigger. Maybe she was from a crashed alien ship. And now she was the only survivor. David didn't ask too many questions. She didn't have the words yet. Instead, he showed her how to use a fork, a spoon, how to turn a faucet on and off. She copied everything, fast, like her brain was recording it all. She said water, hot, food, and then looked at him, pointed to herself, and said, "No name." David paused. He thought for a second, then smiled. "How about Nova?" She repeated it. "Nova," then smiled, really smiled, for the first time. "Nova." That night, she touched the wall and asked, "Safe here?" David nodded. "You're safe." She pointed at him, then touched her chest. "Kind," she said. "You kind." He didn't know what to say. No one had ever called him that before. Later, as she slept on the couch again, curled up with Max beside her, David sat at the kitchen table, thinking. He opened his laptop and searched for meteor reports, crash sites, anything strange from the last week. He found something, a news article from 4 days ago. Astronomers detect strange light near atmosphere. It said, unidentified object believed to have burned up over ocean. But maybe it didn't burn up. Maybe it landed. Maybe Nova wasn't the only one who came down. He looked over at her, sleeping peacefully for now. And for the first time in years, he felt like his life had a purpose. Not just surviving, but protecting something fragile, something special, something not of this world. Outside, far above the clouds, a dark shape moved silently through the sky. No lights, no sound, no human eyes could see it. But it was scanning, searching, tracking. It had her scent, and it was getting closer. The first word. Nova was staring at the mirror. Not her reflection, but the mirror itself. She touched it gently, then quickly pulled her hand back. "No real," she whispered. "Not me." David stood behind her, watching. She had been up since before sunrise, walking around the house barefoot, touching everything like a child discovering the world. She had learned dozens of new words in just 2 days, but she still said almost nothing. Only small pieces, like puzzle parts that didn't fit yet. David handed her a notepad and pen. "Draw," he said. "Show me." She took the pen and stared at it like it was a strange weapon. Then, with surprising control, she drew a star, then another, then a curved line between them. A map, a sky path. "What is this?" he asked. She pointed at one star. "Home," she said, then at another. "Fall." She circled the second star. Her hand trembled, and the pen cracked in her grip. "Chased," she added. "Fire." David nodded slowly. "Someone was following you." She didn't answer. Instead, she looked out the window at the sky, her eyes scanning like a radar. That night, David had a strange dream. He was floating in space, surrounded by dark stars. He saw Nova, not as a girl, but as light, bright, and warm. Behind her, something massive and cold was moving, a shadow shaped like a ship. He woke up sweating, heart pounding. In the living room, Nova was awake, sitting on the floor with Max beside her. She was drawing again. This time, she wasn't using the pen. She was burning symbols into the wooden floor with just her fingertip. David rushed in, shocked. But she held up her hand, calm. "Protect," she said. Safe spell. He didn't know whether to believe her, but he didn't stop her. Later that day, David took her outside. It was risky, but he knew she needed fresh air. They walked through the woods behind his house. Nova stopped suddenly, knelt down, and touched the ground. Metal below, she said. David frowned. There's nothing here. Nova pointed deeper into the forest. Hyde Place ship. His heart skipped. You mean your ship? She nodded. Buried, broken, still there. They pushed through the trees for an hour before they found it. It was covered in dirt, roots, and moss, like it had crashed years ago. Only a piece of it was visible, black metal, smooth, humming softly. Nova touched it, closed her eyes. Blue light glowed from her palm. Then she whispered a word David didn't recognize. The ship responded. A small hatch opened with a hiss. Inside, there was a seat, burnt wires, and a floating glass orb. Nova reached for the orb, but pulled back. No safe now, she said. Track her inside. David understood. If she touched it, they would find her. That night, they returned home in silence. Nova was quiet, almost sad. She sat on the couch, staring at nothing. David sat beside her, unsure what to say. Then she said something unexpected. Why help me? He looked at her, surprised. You needed help, he said. No one else would. She shook her head. Human afraid. Hurt first, talk later. He didn't argue. She wasn't wrong. But then she touched his hand and said her first full sentence. You not like them. David felt something shift inside him. She trusted him, even when the rest of her world was broken. At that moment, a loud thud hit the roof. Nova jumped up, eyes glowing. David grabbed the flashlight and ran outside. Max barked loudly, tail stiff. On the roof, there was nothing. But on the ground, David found something chilling. A strange piece of metal, shaped like a blade. And carved into it was the same symbol Nova drew in the dirt. Someone else was here, and they were sending a message. Nova stood in the doorway, staring at the blade. Then she looked at David and said one word with more fear than anything she had said before. Hunters. Hunted. It started with silence. The kind of silence that felt heavy. Wrong. No birds. No wind. Even Max stopped barking, his ears stiff, nose in the air. David knew something was off. He stood at the window, staring into the woods. Nova stood behind him, still, barely breathing. They close, she said. Very close. How do you know? David asked. She tapped her chest, right above her heart. I feel them. He grabbed his old backpack, stuffed it with food, water, keys, phone, and his grandfather's rusty revolver. Nova didn't ask questions. She just helped, fast and quiet. She didn't seem scared, only alert, like a soldier preparing for a battle she hoped wouldn't come. They got into the car and drove without a plan. David didn't know where to go, just away. But 20 minutes outside town, they saw the first sign. A white van, parked sideways across the road. Men in black uniforms, holding strange weapons. Not police. Not military. Nova tensed. Hunters, she said. Not human. David backed the car up fast and turned off the headlights. They drove through the woods, tires bumping over roots and rocks. Branches scratched the car like claws. Eventually, they reached an old farm. Abandoned, quiet, perfect to hide for the night. Inside the barn, Nova lit a small blue flame with her fingers. It hovered in the air like a soft lantern. David watched, amazed. Why are they after you? He asked. Nova sat on a pile of hay, hugging her knees. She stared at the flame, then finally spoke. My kind escaped prison, built ship in secret, tried to run, but hunters followed. She looked at him, her eyes glowing faintly. We were not soldiers. We were scientists, explorers, peace, but they feared us. David felt his stomach twist. You weren't a threat. No, she said, but fear makes humans blind. Are they human? David asked. Nova shook her head. Not anymore. Changed. They took something from us. Became monsters with our own tech. Outside, Max growled low. David looked through the cracks in the barn wall. Flashlights, moving, slowly. They're here, he whispered. Nova stood, calm. I hide. You leave. No way, David said. I'm not running without you. She walked up to him and put her hand on his chest. Not your fight. It is now, he said. I made it my fight when I gave you soup. Suddenly, the barn doors creaked open. Two men stepped in, tall, silent, skin pale like wax. They didn't speak. They moved like machines, scanning. Nova's flame flickered and vanished. Darkness swallowed them. David held his breath. He clutched the revolver with shaky hands. One of the hunters raised a small device. It beeped once. Nova stepped forward, out of the shadows. "No, hurt him," she said. "Take me." The taller hunter pointed its weapon. But before it could fire, the barn floor lit up. Bright blue symbols appeared under their feet. Nova's protection spell. It pulsed once, then exploded in a wave of light. The hunters flew backward, crashing through the walls like dolls. David stared in shock. Nova's eyes were glowing like fire. She was floating, just an inch off the ground, hair moving like it was underwater. Then the light faded, and she dropped to her knees, weak, breathing hard. David rushed to her. "Nova." "I stopped too," she said. "More come." He picked her up. They ran, back to the car, Max barking beside them. The road was dark, but David kept driving. No more talking, just the sound of tires and fear. After an hour, they stopped by an old gas station. David got out to catch his breath. Nova leaned against the car, eyes half closed. Then, from behind the building, a voice spoke. "You shouldn't be here." An old woman stepped out, gray hair, kind eyes, but serious. She looked right at Nova. "You've brought war with you, haven't you?" David reached for his gun, but the woman raised her hand. "Relax," she said. "I'm not here to hurt you." Nova looked at her, confused. "You know us." The woman nodded. "I've seen your kind before. A long time ago." David stepped closer. "You've seen them?" "Yes," she said. "And I've helped them too." The road to nowhere. The woman's name was June. She lived alone in the hills, in a crumbling farmhouse surrounded by trees. No internet, no phone signal, no neighbors. "Perfect place to disappear," she said, handing David a cup of tea. Nova sat on the floor beside Max, gently rubbing behind his ears. She looked different here, calmer, but still alert, like a deer that hasn't been chased in a while, but still listens for footsteps. June watched her closely. "You're not the first one I've seen," she said softly. "Back in the 90s, one came through here. Didn't speak, just glowed when she cried." Nova looked up, surprised. "Name?" she asked. June shook her head. She never gave one. She died 2 weeks later, shot by men who smiled while they did it. David clenched his fists. Nova lowered her eyes. "I won't let that happen again," June said. "You stay here tonight. Leave before sunrise." That night, Nova couldn't sleep. She stood outside, staring at the stars. David joined her with a blanket and handed her an apple. She sniffed it, then took a small bite. "I dream," she said suddenly, "of light, of voices, of running." David listened. She never talked about her past, not like this. "In home place, I learned stars. I draw music with sound. I help grow food that floats in air." David smiled. "Sounds like a beautiful place." Nova looked up, eyes shimmering. "Was." She pointed to a cluster of stars. "There," she said. "My sky." Then her hand dropped. "And now, no one answers." David wanted to say something, but words felt useless. So he just sat beside her. When she fell asleep on his shoulder, he didn't move. In the morning, June packed them a bag. "Take the back roads, no highways," she said. "There's an old train tunnel down Route 9. Locals say it's haunted, but it's safe. Dark enough to hide in if you need to." David nodded. He didn't trust anyone, but somehow, he trusted June. Before they left, June handed Nova a necklace. It held a small metal charm shaped like a spiral. "From the last one," June said. She said it meant return. "Figured you might need it." Nova took it like it was made of gold. She held it close to her chest and whispered something in a language David didn't understand. They drove for hours, winding through dead roads, forest paths, ghost towns. Max hung his head out the window, tail wagging like things were normal. They stopped once to rest at a dried-up gas station. David bought a bottle of water and a map from a vending machine. Nova stayed in the car, drawing again in her notebook. This time, she drew people, not stars. David, Max, June, and herself, all standing together. When he got back, she showed him and smiled. "Family," she said. David felt something tighten in his chest. No one had called him that in years. That night, they reached the tunnel. It was old, cracked, full of broken glass and rusted metal, but dry and far from any main roads. They made a small fire, and Nova leaned against the wall, exhausted. David sat close, flipping through the map. trying to find where they could go next. Suddenly, Nova grabbed his wrist. "Shoo," she whispered. They listened. At first, nothing. Then, the crunch of gravel outside the tunnel. Boots, slow and careful. Nova stood up, eyes glowing faintly. David reached for the revolver. A figure appeared in the tunnel's mouth. Then another. Silhouettes, tall, still wrong. Nova raised her hand. Blue light began to form. The hunters didn't speak, but they moved forward in perfect silence, weapons raised. David aimed the gun. "I'll shoot," he said, but his hand was shaking. Nova stepped forward. She whispered a word, and the blue light in her hand shot forward. Fast, sharp, like lightning. It hit the first hunter in the chest. He dropped without a sound. The second one fired. Nova threw her hand up, and a glowing shield appeared. The blast hit it, spread like liquid across glass, and vanished. Then she collapsed. Her light went out. David dragged her back behind cover. Fired 2 shots at the second hunter. One missed. One hit. It staggered, then fell. Everything went quiet again. David held Nova in his arms. She was breathing, but weak. "You're okay," he whispered. "I've got you." Her eyes fluttered open. "I feel them more," she said. "More are coming." David looked out into the darkness. He could feel it too. They weren't running anymore. They were being hunted, cornered, tested. And soon, they'd have to fight back. The signal. The tunnel was silent. David sat against the wall, Nova asleep in his lap. Max lay beside them, head on his paws, watching the entrance. The 2 hunters were gone now. Burned, broken, and dragged away by something in the dark. David never saw who or what did it. But Nova whispered one word before she passed out. "Cleaners." Now, the fire was dying. Nova stirred, eyes half open, glowing faintly. "I need sky," she whispered. "Now." David helped her up. She was weak but steady. They walked through the tunnel until they reached the far end. There was a path leading up the hill, rocky, overgrown, but open. At the top stood a rusted satellite dish. Bent, half-buried, and useless to anyone else. But not to Nova. She placed her hand on the base, and the metal pulsed with light. It straightened, realigned, began to hum softly. David watched in awe. "You can fix it." Nova nodded. "I was ship caller. Signal maker." She looked at the sky. "I send home call. Maybe someone here." David paused. "If they hear you, will they come?" Nova didn't answer. Instead, she turned back to him. "You must choose," she said. "I send signal, but they hear too." "The hunters," David whispered. Nova nodded. "They hunt signal. Always." David walked to the edge of the hill, looking out over the dark forest. He felt like he was standing between 2 worlds. Behind him, Earth. In front of him, everything else. Nova stood at the dish, hand hovering above the panel. The moment felt heavy. Then she said something she hadn't before. "First contact long ago. My people sent ship. Soft ship. Peace only." David turned to her. "What happened?" Nova looked down. "Ship shot down. By Earth." David's chest tightened. "Why?" Nova shrugged. "Fear. Confusion. No answer given." She tapped her heart again. "I'm born from escape. Ship was my mother's." David didn't know what to say. "All this time," he said, "we thought we were alone." "You were not," Nova whispered. "You just never listened." A long pause. Then she placed both hands on the dish. Light surged through the machine. The air shimmered, and the trees swayed as if caught in a storm that no one else could feel. A beam of soft blue light shot up into the sky, straight into the stars. It was silent, beautiful, and dangerous. Nova stepped back, eyes dimming. "It is done," she said. "Now we wait." David didn't speak. Max barked once, softly, like a warning. Behind them, in the forest, a new sound began. A low hum, mechanical, unnatural. "They come fast," Nova said. "Signal wakes all." David grabbed the pack and pulled Nova close. They ran back toward the tunnel, but stopped when they reached the road. A black aircraft was landing, silent and sleek. Not human-made. Smooth like liquid metal. Nova gasped. "That's not hunters," she said. "That's ours." The ship opened. A figure stepped out, tall, graceful, glowing softly. Not quite like Nova, but similar. She dropped to her knees, tears forming. "Family," she whispered. They heard. The figure spoke, but not with words. David heard it in his head. Warm, deep, strange. "Nova. 8. We received your signal. Only 3 of us remain." David stepped forward. Can you help us? He asked. They're hunting her. The figure turned to him. Then we help her fight. From the trees behind them came the sound of boots, weapons charging. The hunters had arrived. Nova stood between both sides, her family and her enemies. David beside her, gun in hand. No more hiding. No more running. Nova looked at David, her voice strong. Ready? He nodded. Let's finish this. Kindness is power. The forest was burning. Trees lit up in blue fire as energy blasts cracked through the night. The ground shook, and the air screamed with sound. Nova stood at the center of it all, arms glowing, body trembling. Behind her, David, crouched, breathing heavy, holding a cracked revolver. Beside them, the last of her people, wounded but standing. In front, 10 hunters, cold, silent, skin like armor. They moved without sound, without fear. David aimed and fired. One shot missed. He was out. He dropped the gun, picked up a metal rod, and kept moving forward anyway. Nova shouted something in her language, and a wave of light pulsed from her chest. It hit the closest hunter and sent it crashing into a tree. But she was weakening fast. Her knees buckled, and she fell to one side. David caught her. I'm not letting them take you, he said. Nova looked up, eyes dim. You already saved me. A hunter stepped forward and aimed at them. Nova closed her eyes. David held her tighter. But the blast never came. A new sound cut through the sky. Sharp, piercing, human. A drone. Then another. Then a dozen. Military vehicles rolled in from the north road, headlights blazing. Soldiers poured out. Real humans this time, not hunters. They aimed at everything, unsure who the enemy was. Nova's people raised their hands in peace. The hunters turned to face the new threat, and for the first time, hesitated. David stood up and shouted, Don't shoot them. They're not the enemy. The soldiers didn't fire. Not yet. Confused, unsure. Then a voice came through a loudspeaker. Drop your weapons and identify yourself. Nova stood, barely. She stepped forward, hands raised. And in perfect, clear English, she said, I am not here to harm. I came in peace. I was hunted. This man helped me. He is human, but he showed kindness. The soldiers looked at each other, stunned. One by one, they lowered their guns. The leader stepped forward. What are those things? He asked, pointing to the hunters. Nova turned, eyes fierce. They are what fear creates. Machines made from stolen flesh and lost trust. The leader looked at David. You vouch for her? David nodded. She's not the threat. We are. We were. A long silence. Then the leader said, Then let's fix that. He gave the order. The soldiers fired, not at Nova, but at the hunters. The first fell, then the second. And for the first time, the cold machines began to retreat. They weren't invincible. Not anymore. Nova's people stepped forward, joining the fight. For a moment, Earth and stars fought side by side. And won. After it was over, the fires were put out. The hunters were gone. The forest was quiet again. Nova stood in the clearing, looking up at the stars. She wore the spiral necklace June had given her. Her people stood beside her. Not many, but enough. David limped over, Max trotting behind him, tail wagging. She turned to him. They asked me to return, to rebuild. David smiled, tired but proud. You should, he said. You deserve it. Nova hesitated. Come with us, she said. David laughed softly. Me? In space. Nova nodded. You helped when no one else did. You fed me. You didn't ask what I was. You just cared. David looked at the ground, then at her. I'm no hero. Nova reached out and touched his hand. You were kind, she said. And sometimes, that is enough to change everything. He thought for a moment, then looked at the stars. Okay, he said. Let's go see what's out there. Nova smiled. Not the small, afraid smile from the dog bowl, but a real one, full of light. The ship rose into the sky. Slow, silent, shining. Below, the forest healed. The stars watched. And far above, across the black of space, a message echoed. Kindness is power.